the web of the matrix, and you can go down the conspiracy theories, which most aren't actually conspiracy theories, but that was a pretty hard one to swallow. You can talk about the chemtrails in the sky, the crap they put in our food, the fluoride, the way our bodies work, everything that is pushed into our faces, whether it's adverts on diets and what's good for us, is actually probably bad for us. When my third eye opened, I awoke to all of these truths, and that was a hard pill to swallow, I'm not gonna lie. And I had to really do my research and understand why. Why are they setting us up for fail? Why do they want us to thrive? It's because they want us to be blocked. They want us below our lower three chakras. They want us living in a state of fear and panic. They don't want us living from our heart. Life can be very abundant when you live from your heart. Majority of people are living in a state of fear, and that's what they want. When you wake up to the truth and the knowing that there's more out there, and a lot of the things that we've been told are lies, you start to undo these things and you start to create new neural pathways. You just have to get rid of the trauma and the things that are in the way, then you'll start to see what life is really about.
When I think of the gatekeepers, I think of secret societies, Freemasons, at the heart of this secret society, and that's a colorless thing. Freemasons come in all shapes, sizes, and colors.
Well, no.
They do.
No, they don't.
My grandfather was a Freemason.
No, he was a Prince Hall Mason. Not the same, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, secret society, he was 32nd degree Mason.
Yeah, but, you know, not to cut, keep going.
No, I don't mind being corrected.
No, I just think that, you know, again, racism has been used as such a cudgel on the modern American mind, and it's become so warped that we forget that there was genuine racism. And the actual genuine racism is right there in the secret societies that still run us today. And there's a reason why the Freemasons created an entire separate group that the blacks could join.
Evolved and diversified, leading to the formation of various Masonic rites and orders, each with its own structure and variations in rituals and degrees. There are three pathways for the Freemason. The first and compulsory order, point joining, is what's known as the Blue Lodge, where there are three levels to pass: the level of the apprentice, the degree of the fellow craft, and finally, the Master Mason. For many Masons, these first three degrees are merely a stepping stone to the higher truths. Now, many Masons will openly admit that the Blue Lodge teachings are purposely deceptive, intended to hide the real truths of Masonry until he is worthy of receiving them. Masonry, like all religions and secret societies, conceals its secrets from all except the adept, under false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to conceal the truth, which it calls the light. The truth is not for those who are unworthy. Now, according to some very notable Freemasons who have openly admitted to this, like Albert Pike, many Masons are uninformed about Masonry because the craft has purposefully kept the truth from them, which leads them to publicly claiming that there is no secret, when in truth, they're just simply not aware. The greatest truths are not found in the Blue Lodge, but only when one pursues the more advanced degrees, like the York and Scottish rites of Freemasonry. But one may only pursue the advanced degrees where the real secrets are kept after they have completed the Blue Lodge. The most notable of these rites is that of the Scottish rite, and the highest secrets are possessed by the highest rank in the Scottish rite, the 33rd degree Freemason. To date, there are very few 33rd degree Masons, as this honor is bestowed once every 2 years to those who contribute in the highest form to the organization. But the 33rd degree isn't the highest degree of Freemason. Even higher still is when a 33rd degree Mason is finally awarded the Grand Cross. It is so rare that one encounters a 33rd degree Mason that has been awarded this Grand Cross in their lifetime. There are only a handful of them living in existence at this moment. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, okay, what's the big deal? They just get a fancy title and that's it. Well, here's the scary truth. What if our world leaders are Freemasons who are responsible for making crucial decisions about where our society will head towards? Well, it already has, and it continues to do so to this day. Here's a shocking truth. As many as 14 US presidents have been Masons, and equally as many vice presidents. Masons have dominated the US Supreme Court from 1941 to 1971, and many other vital organizations that dictate our societal decisions. As of only the Senate Congressional Record of 1987, 41 members of the federal judiciary were Masons, 18 senators, 76 of the House of Representatives, and at least 2 of these senators were 33rd degree Masons. It is clear that Masonic influence extends to the highest levels of American government. Masonic ideology runs within the veins of our society and dictates our everyday lives, and we don't even know it. Here's what's even more curious. Some of the greatest minds were also Freemasons, and it's abundantly clear that they possessed some
We will pass your funding challenge in the next 30 days, and you don't pay us until after we've passed. Yes.
secret knowledge. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Sir Winston Churchill, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Mark Twain, Henry Ford, I could go on. What is this secret knowledge that they all possessed, and why is it kept under such great lock and key?
On this episode of Forgotten Streets, we will be covering the life of a prominent figure in Chinese history whose story has been lost to time. His name was Situ Meitong. Situ Meitong was a Chinese underworld and political figure who was very powerful and influential in America's Chinatown. He was best known for being a Tong leader and for being the head of the Chinese Freemasons in America, which had an enormous impact on the overseas Chinese community. Throughout his legendary life, he was not only associated with the biggest in Chinatown, he was also close to several famous world leaders like FDR and Mao Zedong. In this video, we will discuss the full life story of Situ Meitong and how he came to be a Chinatown legend. But still, young Situ was not making enough money and he didn't have any family support. So, at the age of 17, he decided he needed help. He joined the Ji Kung Tong, one of the Chinese societies, or Tongs, that helped Chinese immigrants with employment and protection. The Ji Kung Tong, who are also known as Hongmen or Chinese Freemasons, is one of the oldest Chinese American organizations and shares a lineage with all triads and secret societies, both legal and illegal. All Chinese secret societies allegedly descend from the original society called the Ti Andahui, or the Heaven and Earth Society, which was a Han Chinese group loyal to the Ming Dynasty, with the goal of overthrowing the Qing Dynasty ruled by Manchu foreigners. The Ji Kung Tong's alternate name, the Chinese Freemasons, leads us to a confusing discussion about the connection to Freemasonry. Some people say that the Chinese Freemasons have no real connection to Western Freemasonry and never shared any mutual goals. These people believe that the Ji Kung Tong simply used the name to legitimize themselves and not be seen as a foreign syndicate by whites. Conversely, others believe that the two groups are one and the same, since the Ji Kung Tong actually uses Masonic symbols, clothing, and rituals. Other evidence to support this claim is that there were actual prominent white Freemasons who were instrumental in the Ji Kung Tong, like Major John Jeffrey, who was a close friend of Mark Twain and member of the Chinese Masons in San Francisco. Some conspiracy theorists even go so far as to say that the Chinese Masons have been instrumental in revolutions just like Western Masons and are part of the same world plan of global domination. This, however, can never be proven.
Global sourcing on the go. Source from over 200,000 suppliers and factory direct sourcing. Come and use it.
The Ji Kung Tong were first established in San Francisco around the 1870s, but eventually spread to all other Chinese diaspora communities in the United States and even spread to other countries such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. It was also the first Tong established in New York's Chinatown, in which all original residents were sworn members. The organization was at times considered an organized crime group or highbinder society because it was associated with the other Tongs that engaged in crime like the Hopsing and Suising Tong. But the truth is that the Jikung Tong itself was set up as a benevolent association meant to protect Chinese immigrants from racism and other Chinese gangsters who tried to bully them. Although not an official criminal organization, the Jikung Tong had members who were gangsters and who were sometimes involved in gambling and violence. However, the other Tongs were more frequently involved in the underworld and could be labeled as crime syndicates. When Situ Mei Tong became a sworn brother of the Jikung Tong, he took an oath to never reveal the secrets of the Brotherhood on pain of death. The organization made him more connected and financially stable, so he didn't have to work as a cook anymore. But just a few years later, he ran into some trouble, bad enough that he would need the help of his new brothers. A local restaurant that Situ used to hang out at was frequently harassed by a white gang, and one day they came when Situ happened to be inside. After 3 white men were bothering the staff and customers, Situ confronted one of the guys and knocked him to the ground. After beating him mercilessly, the man died, and the other men scattered. He was eventually arrested for murder and sentenced to death. The Jikung Tong raised money for him and got the best white lawyers to defend Situ to claim self-defense. His sentence was eventually reduced, and Situ was released from prison after serving only 10 months. After release, Situ Mei Tong became a famous name in Chinatown for his bravery, and he moved up the ranks of the Jikung Tong Society. He then relocated to the East Coast and became based in Boston's Chinatown. Following his imprisonment, he realized that his people had to do more to physically defend themselves from threats. This led him and other gangster-minded Jikung Tong members to create a more militant organization called the Onlyong Tong. The first Onlyong was established in New York in the 1890s, and the second in Boston in 1904, and from there on they spread throughout the country. Situ Mei Tong himself was head of the Boston sect and number 1 in charge of the Onlyong's national committee. At the time, the Hip Sing Tong dominated criminal activity in Chinatowns in the East Coast, such as drug sales, extortion, and prostitution. They were also no strangers to assault and even murders. The Onlyong's goal was to counteract the influence of the Hip Song Tong and help those who were bullied by Hip Song gangsters. Although they were still a benevolent organization, they eventually turned into a full-blown criminal organization as well. The Onlyongs became heavily involved in prostitution, gambling, extortion, protection rackets, drug smuggling, and weapon smuggling. The Onlyong's resistance to the Hip Sings created an eternal rivalry which lasted for over 100 years. And the two groups battled frequently on the streets, which made up a large portion of America's Tong Wars and left Chinatown streets bloody for years. In New York, the Onlyongs and their leader Tom Lee warred with the Hip Sings and their leader Mock Duck for many years in the early 1900s. Under Situ Mei Tong's guidance in Boston, the Onlyongs and one of their leaders, Charlie Boston, warred with the Hip Sings and their leader, Wary Charles, in many Tong Wars. The criminal activity in Tong Wars brought Mei Tong, the Onlyong, and the Jikung Tong under constant pressure from law enforcement, which prompted him to hire a well-connected white American lawyer around 1908. This lawyer was none other than future President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, also known as FDR. The two became close friends for many years to come. Mei Tong's relationship with FDR is largely unknown to the public, but was very influential in political and social affairs. Many believe that this friendship was the reason that President Roosevelt lifted the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1943. It's also worth noting that FDR was a prominent Freemason, and it's possible that there was a connection between the white and Chinese Masons. Now approaching the 1910s, political unrest was brewing in Situ's homeland. Chinese revolutionary Sun Yat-sen was plotting the overthrow of China's Qing dynasty monarchy in order to replace it with a republic. His ideas were very dangerous, which got him expelled from China. While in Japan, he formed a secret revolutionary society called the Tongmenghui. He then reached out to all Chinese secret societies, both criminal and legitimate, to form a massive network of anti-Qing resistance. One of the most important factors to Sun's revolution was the overseas Chinese community. He reached out to Chinese Masons in Honolulu, Hawaii, and became a sworn member of the Ji Kung Tong around 1904. Sun then reached out to the Ji Kung Tong in New York and gained full support from Situ Meitong and his organizations. Sun stayed at Meitong's house for weeks, and Meitong provided Sun with his own personal security. Meitong gave the brave revolutionary his support in many ways and raised over 150,000 yuan for the cause. Sun Yat-sen and the revolutionaries were successful in 1911, and the First Republic of China was formed. Meitong would then stay in close connection with the Republic of China, Sun Yat-sen, and future leader Chiang Kai-shek for the years to come. In said years to come, Situ Meitong stayed active in Chinatown and in both his organizations, the Jin Kung Tong and the Onlyong Tong. The Onlyong was spreading to other cities like Chicago and expanded to thousands of members nationwide. They were dominating criminal activity in their territories and had every business, both legitimate and illegitimate, paying them. The group went through many bloody Tong wars and other turbulent times. Seligman, in his famous book Tong Wars, says that after dozens of people got killed in the Hip Sing and Onlyong Wars in the 1920s, that Situ Meitong had to play godfather and interfere to stop the bloodshed with a peace treaty. It's unclear how directly involved Situ remained with crime, but there is no doubt that he sanctioned it and profited from it. However, his reputation remained relatively clean because of his good relationship with the Democrats and the US government. By the 1930s and at the beginning of FDR's presidency, the Onlyong Tong became aligned with the Democratic Party. This was most likely due to Meitong's relationship with FDR, who was a lifelong Democrat. It was also believed that the Onlyongs were getting special treatment from the newspaper and police regarding criminal activity like extortion and gambling. Some even believe that Meitong's connection to the government kept him out of prison and out of the newspapers for all those years. This theory could possibly explain why he doesn't have any criminal record after his release from prison, for a call to FDR would have easily gotten him out of any legal trouble. The Onlyong Tong was becoming more influential in legitimate business and politics and leaving the Tong War activities in the past. Now with serious political connects, the Onlyong needed to clean up their image. Under Meitong's orders, the Onlyong Tong was officially renamed the Onlyong Merchants Association in 1932, in order to look more like a legitimate organization and not some crime syndicate. By this time, the Ji Kung Tong had over 500 chapters around the globe with tens of thousands of members. Situ Meitong, who was in his 70s, became the #1 in charge of all Ji Kung Tongs in the Americas, making him one of the most powerful overseas Chinese. But another disaster was about to unfold. In 1931, the Japanese invaded Manchuria, the northeast region of China, which was the beginning of over a decade of Japanese occupation in China. The invasion resulted in the death and displacement of millions of Chinese citizens. Although Situ Meitong had issues with the Republic of China's ruling party, the KMT, and its leader Chiang Kai-shek, he decided that they needed all the support they could get to fight the Japanese. Meitong and the Ji Kung Tong established fundraisers in their lodges and helped raise more than $3 million for the Chinese war effort. Again, Meitong reconnected with FDR, who was a Chiang supporter, and served as a middleman to help both of his nations. In 1941, in the midst of World War II, Meitong was invited to China by KMT officials and offered a position in the government. In Hong Kong, Meitong led a group of gangsters responsible for suppressing and eliminating any triad members who were sympathetic to the Japanese. However, Meitong was arrested by the Japanese after their occupation of Hong Kong and was offered to work with them. He bravely refused and was kept on house arrest. But fortunately for Meitong, an underground Chinese communist organization aided him in escaping the occupied territory. He relocated to Chongqing and stayed with the famous mob boss Du Yusheng from the Green Gang. Situ Meitong eventually returned to the Americas and continued to raise money and support the Chinese in the war effort. After the surrender of the Japanese at the end of World War II, the Chinese Civil War between the nationalists and the communists kicked off. Situ Meitong was now faced with a dilemma. He was disappointed with the dictatorship of Chiang Kai-shek and the instability of the republic. He was also on good relations with the communists, and he believed their promises of representation. Therefore, he was leaning towards the CCP. But supporting the communists wouldn't be easy, considering all the Chinese societies in America were pro-KMT and anti-communist. He started a nationwide Ji Kung Tong radio broadcast in which he promoted communist propaganda. He tried to bring the Chinese Masons and other Chinese societies in America on board with the CCP, but almost all of them rejected his overtures. Meitong eventually relocated to mainland China in 1949. He continued promoting communist propaganda through radio and newspaper to the Americas, but he was eventually labeled a traitor.
Did you know you can order from the Pokemon Center Japan? Well, you can with Dorzo. Dorzo is a proxy website that allows you to shop directly from Japan.
He was expelled from the Onlyong and Ji Kung Tong and forced to stay in China for the remainder of his life. His support for the communists ruined his prestige and reputation with the Chinese American community, who was still overwhelmingly pro-nationalist and pro-Chiang Kai-shek. This left the question of why would he risk everything he built in America just to support a particular government? Some suspected that he wasn't actually a communist and that he believed the communists would win the Chinese Civil War over the nationalists, so it was a simple case of joining the winning side. If this was really his thought process, his predictions came true, because Mao Zedong and the communists won the Chinese Civil War and established the People's Republic of China in 1949. Meitong became close friends with Mao and was present at the founding ceremony of the People's Republic in Tiananmen Square. Meitong continued his life in China and became very influential in the nation amongst powerful military leaders and officials. Now, some say that he disagreed internally with communist policies after realizing they broke so many promises, but that he never spoke out of fear. C.T. Meitong died in 1955 in Beijing at the age of 89 of a brain hemorrhage. His funeral had every powerful person in China in attendance, including Mao himself. He left behind 3 sons. With the death of C.T. Meitong, the Ji Kung Tong's influence in America declined, but the other Tongs like the Hip Sing and the Onlyong continued to be influential in Chinatowns across the country, and even up until the present day. Ji Kung Tong and Chinese Freemasons still exist in America and still have a voice in Chinatown. The lines between community organization and criminal society have been blurry even up until recent times, like Raymond Chow's association with the Ji Kung Tong in San Francisco or Herbert Liu's Freemason gang in New York City in the 90s. However, the Chinese Freemasons in America today are not involved with criminal activity. Also, the Chinese triads in China, Hong Kong, and Macau still have association with Chinese Masons, as shown in the example of how Broken Tooth Koi of the 14K established the World Hongmen History and Culture Association with other gangsters. Siu Meitong had a long, eventful life and is still held in high regard by many in China and overseas. Numerous statues and memorials have been erected in his honor all over the world. And in 2018, an exhibit in Beijing was dedicated to his life for the 150th anniversary of his birth. His combination of underworld and mainstream ties make him a mysterious figure that's hard to label, as is the case for many Chinese gangsters. And although his political affiliations will cause his legacy to be disputed for years to come, one cannot deny the influence C.T. Meitong had in Chinatown and his impact on the Chinese community as a whole. We hope that with this biography, that we will help prevent C.T. Meitong's story from being lost.
Lantern is important in its artistic value because it preserves one of the oldest art and craft tradition from China, which is called running horse. The central panels where you really show the traditional calligraphy and paintings, they all have at least double, triple, or multiple meanings. And the bottom panels have the contributors' names, which bring us back to 1930s Victoria's Chinatown. And all these very important people who made that history.
One of the only surviving people to have seen it in its original glory is Victoria City Councilor Charlene Thornton-Joe's father, John Joe Chow.
But my dad talks about the lantern. He remembers it running He also looks carefully to see if our grandfather's name is written on it.
Frank Lowe's family history is also attached to the lantern.
Well, we didn't even know that his name was on there until Mr. John Joe recognized my grandfather's name on the lantern.
But this lantern is not the only piece of history remembered. From building the Canadian Pacific Railway, to the head tax, to exclusions, and the contributions of Chinese Canadians to Canada.
It's so funny that that on our planet are all of these mega structures that we just are like, I don't really know. It's just that always blows my mind that like all over the planet, signs.
Did you see that one I posted on Instagram the other day?
No.
Oh my God, this is fucking insane.
What is it?
Oh shit.
What?
Where did I leave my phone?
There's a phone right there.
Where? Oh, well, it was hidden by my mic. Sorry. I'm gonna send it to Jamie right now. You got it? Yeah. So, check this out. Give me some volume on this.
Central Java's lush Kedu Plains in pursuit of this mythical peak near the little settlement of Burra. They chopped and burned the strangling vegetation for 6 weeks and removed tons of volcanic ash. What they discovered were marvelous figures cut in stone, thousands of them, hidden beneath the volcanic jungle.
Buddha.
Believed to have been built in the 8th and 9th century, the Borobudur Temple is an uncontested marvel whose intricate architecture continues to confound scholars. Despite being one of the most important sites on Java, there is no written record of who erected it or what its intended purpose was. Because there are no inscriptions or dates on the monument, historians must make educated guesses as to when it was most likely created. The dating estimates are based purely off of architectural comparisons found elsewhere in Indonesia. Given the magnitude of the construction, it appears remarkable that no ruler or dynasty took credit for it. Borobudur is the world's biggest Buddhist temple, and yet nobody knows who built it.
Whoa.
On the Indonesian...
That's cool.
Yeah, Jamie, I'm sending you another one right now. I mean, there's a bunch of these things. There's a bunch of things like that. They're just like,
So
like, who made impact?
Yeah,
theory,
but
right? Check this out though, real quick. I want you to watch this because this is fucking bananas. Same
Who
account.
set out to empty ponds that residents said were bottomless. The Longyu Caves, located in the village of Xian Beichun in Zhejiang Province, China, are a massive and majestic ancient underground world. The Longyu Caves, also known as the Shaonanhai Stone Chambers, are thought to date back to at least 2,000 years and represent one of the largest underground excavations of ancient times, as well as an ongoing mystery that has confounded scientists from every discipline that has researched them. Scientists from archaeology, architecture, engineering, and geology around the world have no understanding who or why the Longyu Caves were carved into the earth. Currently, 24 hand-carved caves encompassing a staggering 30,000 square meters have been found so far.
Jesus.
Each grotto is carved into solid siltstone and descends roughly 30 meters down, with stone rooms, bridges, gutters, and ponds. The Longyu Caves are supported by pillars that are evenly dispersed throughout the caves, and the walls, ceiling, and stone columns are uniformly decorated with chisel marks in a pattern of parallel lines and ornate designs. Despite their magnitude and the work required to build them, no indication of their construction, or even their existence, has been discovered in archival sources. Despite the fact that the whole excavation involved about 1 million cubic meters of stone, there is no archaeological evidence explaining where that amount of stone went, nor is there evidence of the work being done.
Damn.
Furthermore, there isn't a single historical source that mentions them, which is extremely remarkable given the scope of the undertaking. Despite decades of analysis, the Longyu Caves mystery remains essentially unsolved.
What the fuck, dude?
You know, when people like bash Hancock or try to dismiss it or debunk it, it's so frustrating to me because like first of all, nobody builds something that big underground just for fun. Like, you know what I mean? I think we burrowed in. We had to, like, whatever happened, or maybe something happened and then we were so scared it would happen again, we created, that's like an ancient survival shelter.
Well, they have them in Turkey as well. There's these giant is that where it was? Where Randall told us about?
Dude, those are crazy. Those are crazy with like air ducts and just insane. And it's like, you don't do that unless you have to.
Right.
You don't burrow like a human ant nest.
Yeah, these things. Like the amount of resources it took to do what these people did. These are huge chambers carved into stone.
And the
They think that the sky was like fucking raining lightning at one point.
Yeah. Pole shift. I mean, to me, the really eerie thing about all of this is the information gap. It's that we have this massive, like the hard drive has been like fragmented from like we just don't know.
But thank God they made everything out of stone. The thing about it is, whatever their technology was that existed to make the pyramids, it was different. We make everything out of metal and glass, and that shit's not going to be here in 10,000 years. It's just not going to be here. It'll all get destroyed by just Mother Nature. It'll just eventually get, like, I think they've done, like, analysis of, like, how much of a city will be around after 500 years of just vacancy. And after 1,000 years. Well, Detroit is a great example. You see what happens in Detroit?
Yeah.
Houses are just getting taken over by trees.
Yeah.
Like, trees go through the roof. They go through the floor. They're literally devouring the homes. The homes that are abandoned are getting eaten by trees.
So cool.
It's very cool. But it shows you it didn't take, I mean, nature has a long lifespan.
The underground city of Derinkuyu goes down over 250 feet. In the first few years of exploration, experts went 18 stories down, and since then, 2 more levels have been discovered. It might go down even further. Archaeologists are still excavating. The total area of the city discovered is 5 square miles, or 13 square kilometers, and housed over 22,000 people. The upper floors were used as apartments, closest to the fresh air. But Derinkuyu has a complex system of over 16,000 ventilation shafts that allow air to circulate through every room in the city. It also has a fresh water supply. At the lowest levels of Derinkuyu is a series of underwater rivers, and wells were centrally located to bring water to the entire city. In fact, people living on the surface above Derinkuyu have been using wells originally intended for the underground city. They just didn't realize what was underneath them. Incidentally, Derinkuyu is Turkish for deep well.
See? That name makes sense. Tough, not so much.
You need to get past the names, pal.
Yeah.
The tunnels seem to go on forever. To walk from one end of Derinkuyu to the other is a 7-kilometer walk, or 4 miles of tunnels. As you move further down the structure, you'll find areas that meet every need of a self-contained city. There are dining halls, churches, schools. There are rooms for pressing and storing olive oil. There are markets, bakeries, wineries, libraries, and storage for vast amounts of food. A few more levels down are areas for keeping livestock and stables for horses. There are areas for butchering, curing, and storing meat. Thousands of people could survive for a very long time completely underground. But who would build a giant subterranean city?
Thought to be at least 1900 years old and estimated to once being inhabited by up to 70,000 people.
Do you know what? A lot of this is quite weathered now, but you can see there's like clear stairs and paths into different rooms. It's thousands of years old. You know what I'm fascinated by is that this stone, solid, but look, it's soft at the same time. How does it do that?
This is limestone, so its texture is like a soft cheese underground and hardens magnificently outside in the open air and sun. It's what a lot of houses in this old district here are made of, and something Midya is famous for, as well as the caves themselves.
Savaşlardan dolayı yaşam gördüğünüz gibi bu alanlarda işlik, depolama, yatakhane, ahır.
The human body is almost 80%, 90% water, and it's also got electrolytes in it, which we know to be salt, potassium, different minerals. That means we're a salt battery. No different than the car battery, different than something like that. And there's a patent actually called the Cali patent, which I'll hold up here for the camera to see. And this patent actually was developed in 1897, and not much has been done with it because at that time everyone was afraid of electricity. In this case, Dr. Clark developed a product using a 9-volt battery. And I'll just show you in the back here. There it is, 9-volt battery. And this particular unit, you just snap on your wrist with 2 wristbands.
I'll have a minute. Yeah.
You snap it on your wrist, just to prove that I'm a circuit. I push the little green light, and the thing is on. And if I put my hands together, You can hear that I'm a circuit, and I'm a closed circuit at this point. Now with
Why do we get a sound when you put your hands together?
because I've closed the circuit. Now when I take my hands apart, obviously the electricity is now being able to flow through the body. The electricity can't go through the digestive tract, so in the digestive tract, to kill the microorganisms, the specific parasites, she's found the effectiveness of the black walnut, which the native Indians used for cleansing many years ago. The black walnut, in its green hull form, kills many of the microorganisms, and in conjunction with another product called wormwood and cloves, typical cloves that you would get at the store, these three in combination have the ability to go in and kill all the pathogens. Now what's most interesting is the Mexican people have the lowest incidence of cancer anywhere on the planet, and the reason is they kill the ascaris with this particular product here we all know to be the jalapeno pepper. And those seeds of the jalapeno pepper, only 10 or 15 seeds twice a day, have the ability to kill the ascaris, which she found to be a major cause of why the body loses oxygen at the tumor sites. And to kill that, you use the jalapeno seeds, and then you back that up with a little ozonated olive oil.
How are you so certain that each time you have...
We use scanning techniques and we do blood tests. You can tell if a tumor has shrunk or not, but I realized this kind of criticism would come along, and that's why I saved 50 sets of x-rays before and after and all the blood tests, and that's what I published in the last book.
Now this is where you really...
Palestinian population overall went from 2 million to 5 million, okay? Pretty bad at genocide if that's what's happening right there. In Gaza, it went from 645,000 to 2.1 million. It's 3x. That ain't genocide to me.
Do you know why they increased?
Because they're having babies like crazy.
No. You see, this is how like when you watch data while being uninformed makes you look very stupid.
Tell me why. Tell me how the population has gone from 2 million to 5 million.
Yeah, because most of the 1.5 extra million didn't come from Gaza. They were pushed away from other parts of Israel. So most of these people, they have increased because of refugees The people who belong to Gaza are 700,000 people. Right now, Gaza is 2.2 million. That is not birth rate, my friend. These are people pushed from, and by the way, that's not the first time. 1948, at the night of the declaration of the State of Israel, 1.5 million Palestinians were like moved overnight. So it's not the first thing. So before you giving me numbers you want to appear smart, know what are behind the numbers, because these are not people that give in babies. These are people being pushed from other places in order to be part of the open air prison that it is.
Beginning March 30th, 2018, they tried nonviolent civil resistance. And what was the Israeli response? There's a 250-page, single-spaced UN report describing the response. Israel took its best snipers, lined them up along the perimeter fence, while there was this festive atmosphere among the Palestinians. There was music, there was dancing, there was song. The snipers, I'm quoting the report, intentionally targeted children, medics, journalists, disabled people. They describe double amputees 300 meters from the perimeter fence that Israel shot. When they didn't kill them, they targeted them from the kneecap down, paralyzed them. One Israeli sniper boasted to Haaretz newspaper he shot 42 kneecaps in one day. 42 children and adults paralyzed for life.
Can I get one presidential candidate who doesn't want to support a foreign war? Can I get one presidential candidate who will say 6 months without war?
David, you already said that you don't believe that those Palestinians or their offspring have a right to return. You just said that to me. So I didn't
say that. I think it would be nice if some of them were allowed to, but I don't think that's really what the battle's over. I think what the battle is over is the occupation since 1967, the blockade of Gaza since 2006, and I think what the battle is really over right now is what Israel is doing to Gaza, absolutely leveling the place, and all the while bragging about how they want to. Okay, I don't know. They want to move the population. Well, Netanyahu is going, and I know you can say you're a critic of Netanyahu, but you support Israel. But at the same time, it's like the guy is the longest serving prime minister and the current prime minister of the country. So if you're supporting the country, you kind of are supporting, at least to some degree, what he's doing right now. And it is unconscionable. It is the worst humanitarian catastrophe in the world right now. And the idea that you, who are supposed to be the anti-neocon, anti-war presidential candidate, are immediately on October 7th, before we even had an investigation, before we even knew what happened there, you immediately say, what basically you said everything they say about Ukraine. You said it was an unprovoked attack, which, like, come on, give me a break. An attack from Gaza against Israel is unprovoked. And then you said we have to support them in whatever it takes. Well, look, sir, we're watching it right now. This is whatever it takes. Just women and children dying under rubble. Every day you can't go on social media without seeing another video of some baby dying. This is what we're supposed, after the last 20 years of disastrous wars, we got to support the next one. I mean, sir, this is like a biblical level of evil. And why? Why should we as Americans have to fund this? Why should we have to give them a blank check? I'm sorry, it's been long enough. Agree with that, but okay. Do you have concerns about the level of Israeli influence in our politics here in the United States of America?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Schwab's life by subscription, quote, is really serfdom. It's slavery. Billionaire globalist corporations will own everything. Homes, factories, farms, cars, furniture. And everyday citizens will rent what they need, if their social credit score allows. The plan of the Great Reset is that you will die with nothing. To pull off this evil plan, Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum will need to take more than just material possessions from Australians. Senators in this very chamber today who support the Great Reset threaten our privacy, freedom and dignity. Yes, they're in this Senate chamber. One Nation vehemently opposes the Great Reset, the Digital Identity Bill, theft of agricultural land use, forcing farmers off their land, and all of the Great Reset. One Nation has a comprehensive plan to bring our beautiful country back to sustainable prosperity. And in the months ahead, we will be rolling that plan out. Instead of Lib Lab pushing Klaus Schwab's Great Reset with the tagline, "You will own nothing and be happy," One Nation advocates the Great Resist. We stand for a world where individuals and communities have primacy over predatory globalist billionaires and their quizzling bureaucrats, politicians and mouthpiece media.
In the history of public inquiries, it is hard to remember one quite so clear-cut in its devastating conclusions. The blood disaster, it says, was not an accident. The blood inquiry found the risks of blood and blood products causing severe infection were well known before most patients were treated, and that to save face and expense, successive governments refused to admit responsibility, and that has compounded the suffering of those infected and affected. Who's to blame? The inquiry concludes it happened because doctors, the blood services and governments did not put patient safety first. It said that blood products bought from abroad were unsafe and should never have been licensed for use in the UK. There is more, that there were failures in palliative care for those dying after being infected with HIV or hepatitis C. More than 30,000 people who sought treatment and help from the health service instead got infected. 3,000 have already died, and the deaths go on.
Tupac.
Oh, that's crazy.
Tupac was a poet, and he cared about his race, his culture, and he understood what was going on in the world in a deep, deep way. And I love Biggie. He understood what was going on in his hood, but he wasn't thinking globally, and he wasn't thinking like the entire race, and he wasn't thinking the entire tribe and entire humanity. Like Tupac was the deep motherfucker.
The people we looked up to, went out eye to eye with, we begin to see our parents as people we sympathize with. Used to praise heroes and authority figures. Now it seems as if there's no heroes left, and our MPs don't speak for us, and the TV personalities that we used to be in awe of turned out to be the pedophiles and the rapists we were warned of. Who can you believe in? Are you saying I should trust no one? I just finished reading about the racist comments from Hulk Hogan, and I just heard about the murder trial of Jimmy Fly Snooker. My childhood is full of false idols, spinning webs of lies for us. Is everyone a crock and are we corrupt by our nature? Is it something that is hardwired into our behavior? Am I still naive for believing despite everything love is in our instinct? Or am I just buried in denial under miles of wishful thinking? Oh, wishful thinking. Wishful thinking.